Hi children, today I am going to start history lesson number 14 in your textbook, and the title is The Democratic and Nationalist Revolutions in 19th Century. In our previous chapter we have learned about some of the democratic and nationalist revolutions in 17th and 18th centuries, and in this chapter we are going to learn about democratic and nationalist revolutions in 19th century. Now let us start. Nationalism and rise of nation states in Europe. Before 19th century, Europe was divided into small kingdoms and large empires. During 19th century, ideas of nationalism took roots in Europe, and in many of the countries like France, Germany, Italy, etc., it led to the establishment of nation states in place of dynastic rule and empires. Till then, there were many empires, there were many kingdoms, and they were being ruled by the kings and emperors. But now the nation states were established. What are these nation states? A nation state was one in which people developed a sense of common identity and shared a common history and language and culture. That means people who are living in a nation state, they share a common history, they have a common history, they have common identity, they have common culture, common language. On the basis of language, culture, and also common history, these nation states are formed with specific boundaries. So these are called as nation states. And this commonness did not exist from the time immemorial. That means from long back it was not existing in the world, but it was achieved through struggles by leaders and the common people. We have already seen how in France political and constitutional changes took place during the French Revolution of 1789, and how sovereignty was transferred from monarchy to common people. After the French Revolution of 1789, sovereignty was transferred, that means all the powers were transferred from monarchy to common people. Monarchy came to an end and common people got the power. And this revolution also proclaimed that it was the people who constitute nation, and also it is the people who shape its destiny and future. It was made clear by the French Revolution that it is the people living in the country who constitute nation. They form the nation. And because they form the nation, it is the people only who shape its destiny and future. And in fact, this French Revolution gave the term nation its modern meaning. Actually, by saying nation, what do we mean? We mean it is a country. Nation means a country. It made it clear that a nation is not a territory in which the people belonging to it reside or live, but a nation is the people themselves. That means people themselves are called as a nation. For example, if we say India beat Pakistan in the cricket match, what does it mean? Here by saying India, do we mean a country? No. Because India did not play any match with Pakistan. The country of India did not play a match with a country called Pakistan. The people in India, the players in India, they played a match with the people in Pakistan. So here India denotes the people of India. Pakistan denotes the people of Pakistan. So by saying nation, we mean that the people living in that country, not the nation, not the country. If a nation is sovereign, then the people who form the nation are the source of all power and authority. And that was made clear by the French Revolution. And there cannot be any rulers above the people. That is to say that the monarchy should come to an end. And only republic where the government is answerable to the people and in which the government derives its powers from the people, like democracy or republic, can be there. So monarchy should come to an end, because over the people there should be no authority or no rule. And in France, when the leader of Jacobins, Robespierre, ruled, it was called as Reign of Terror. 1793 to 94 already we learnt in the previous chapter. And the Jacobins prepared a constitution according to which right to vote was given to all the people. And it was the first genuinely democratic constitution because it proclaimed that the happiness of all the people was the aim of the government. And the constitution also stated that the government should provide work or livelihood to all the people. That is the responsibility of the government. Of course, these were never really put into effect or practice. And after Robespierre, France was ruled by a directory consisting of 5 members. But these members often fought among themselves. So there was no stability of government. Government after government collapsed. And taking advantage of this situation, Napoleon Bonaparte declared himself as Emperor of France. And Napoleon conquered many places all over Europe. He removed many of the kings and occupied their kingdoms. And he was first defeated by England, Prussia, and Russia in the Battle of Nations in 1813. And finally, he was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 and sent to an island where he died. And after the defeat of Napoleon in 1830, there was another revolution in France. And in 1848, there was another revolution which abolished monarchy in France. And finally, France once again became republic in 1871. Now in this chapter, we are going to discuss the causes for these revolutions. Now let us start. In 1792, for the first time in history, workers, peasants, and other non-property classes were given equal political rights. But thus getting equal right to vote did not solve the problems of the common people. The revolution did not bring real equality for all the people. For example, there was no economic equality. That means there was much gap between the rich and the poor. There was no social equality. There was no economic equality. So, these ideas of social and economic equality gave rise to a new kind of political movements. Now, kingdoms of Europe. How the kingdoms of Europe in those days. In mid-18th century, there were no nation states in Europe. I told you nation states means with clear geographical boundaries based on language and common culture, they are formed. So, in mid-18th century, there were no nation states in Europe. Germany, Italy, Switzerland, all these were divided into kingdoms. Eastern and Central Europe, they were under monarchies. That means they were ruled by the kings. And within the territories, there were people of different languages and cultures. They spoke different languages and belonged to different ethnic groups. For example, Austria and Hungary, they were ruled by Habsburg Empire. And in this empire, the aristocracy, that means very rich people are called as aristocracy group. Very rich people spoke German language. Lombardy and Venetia, they were also part of this Habsburg Empire. In these regions, people spoke Italian language. That means in different regions, people spoke different languages. And in Hungary, half of the population, they spoke Magyar language. And the other half spoke variety of dialects. I hope you know the meaning of dialects. Different ways of speaking a language is called as dialect. That means in Telugu, we call it as Yasa. In Nellore, Visakhapatnam, I am giving you an example. In Nellore, Visakhapatnam, Srikakulam, East Godavari, in all these places, Telugu is the spoken language. But the dialects are different. In Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish language. Other than these, many diverse groups lived within the boundaries of the empire. Because of so many differences, political unity could not be achieved easily. Now, the aristocracy and the new middle class. How the middle class rose in the society. The aristocracy means, I told you, the group of rich people is called as aristocracy. In Europe, socially and politically also, the aristocracy was the dominant class. It was in domination. They had large estates and also town houses. Because they were very, very rich people, they had large estates and also they had town houses. And this aristocracy class were few in number. And peasants were the majority. The farmers were the majority and the aristocracy class were few in number. And industries were well developed in Western and Central Europe. Industrial revolution began in England in the second half of 18th century, but in France and Germany it occurred during the 19th century. And due to the industrial revolution, new social groups like working class, middle classes, industrialists, businessmen, traders, and various other kinds of professionals came into existence. Because when new factories are set up or new industries are started, people start working in the factories. So working class came into existence. And also the industrialists who run the factories, who run these industries, business people, traders who trade. So all these new groups of people, professional groups came into existence. Middle class people were educated, and so the ideas of national unity and the abolition of aristocratic privileges gained popularity. As you know, because this aristocracy, they were very rich people, they were given more privileges when compared to the common people. And middle class people who got education, who were educated, they could not tolerate this. Giving more privileges to the aristocratic group, they could not tolerate it. And because the middle class were educated, they were the first to get the idea of abolishing the privileges being enjoyed by the aristocratic class. Because they were educated, the middle class people, they were the first to get the idea of abolishing these privileges which are being enjoyed by the aristocratic class. In their opinion, all should be treated equally. No one should be given more privileges. As they felt it was not justified, they got the idea of abolishing the privileges being enjoyed by the aristocratic class. So, the ideas of national unity and equality rose in liberal middle class first. And at that time, there were two ideologies which sprang up in Europe. And they were liberalism and conservatism. Now, let us see what are these two ideologies. Liberal nationalism. Now, first let us see what is liberalism and who are these liberals. Liberalism, it is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free. And for the new middle class, liberalism means individual freedom and equality of all before law. These liberals, they wanted individual freedom and equality of law before law for all the people, must be treated equally before law. And politically, liberalism means government by consent. That means electing the government by the people. That means having equal political rights, that is right to vote to elect the government. If all the people have the political right to elect their representative or elect the government, that is called as political right. And if the people elect their representative, that is they are forming the government by consent. And equality before law did not mean universal suffrage. Suffrage means right to vote. And this right to vote was not given to all the people. As already we know, in France, the 1791 constitution gave right to vote to only active citizens. Who were these active citizens? Only men above 25 years of age who paid tax equal to 3 days' wages of the laborers. That means very rich people only pay taxes. That is to say, only rich men had the right to vote. And in economics, liberalism stood for the freedom of markets and abolition of restrictions imposed by the state on the movement of goods. That means in economics, liberalism means markets must be given freedom for trading. That means freely the countries must be able to trade in their goods. In exporting or importing goods, there must be freedom for the countries. And abolition of restrictions imposed by the state on a movement of goods. That means no restrictions should be imposed by the state on the movement of goods between countries. That means free movement of goods must be allowed between the countries. Now, Napoleon declared himself as Emperor of France in 1804. I told you, taking advantage of the situations after the Directory ruled over France, when there was no political stability, Napoleon declared himself as Emperor of France in 1804, and as part of his administrative measures, he created a confederation of 39 states. Confederation means an organization of several countries together. They come together to help each other, that is called as confederation. They come together or they are brought together by anyone, that is called as confederation. So Napoleon brought several countries together to help each other, and this is called as Confederation of 39 states. It was formed by Napoleon. All these 39 states had their own currency and their own weights and measures. There were different currencies and different weights and measures in all these 39 states. Now let us see the problem faced by the people. If a merchant travelled from Hamburg to Nuremberg to sell his goods in 1833, he had to pass through 11 customs barriers and pay customs duty of 5% at all the customs barriers. Just like when vehicles go from one place to another, one city to another city, or one place to another place, they have to pay at the toll gate. Like that, these traders also, they have to pay at the customs barriers. And in those days, they have to pay customs duty of 5% at all the customs barriers. And when a merchant pays at all these 11 customs barriers at the rate of 5%, what profit he can get? He will be at loss. And customs duty is a tax levied on the imported goods. It was levied based on the weight or measurement of the goods. And as each state had its own weights and measurements and its own currency, it was a time-consuming calculation. It used to take long time to calculate the money to be paid to the customs barriers or money to be collected for anything, because the currency was different and even weights and measurements were also different. And the customs duty was levied based on the weights and measurements. These weights and measurements were also, they were different in different states. So, for example, LE was the unit of measurement of cloth. Now, what is the unit of measurement of cloth for us? It is meter. We measure the cloth in meters. But in those days, LE was the unit of measurement of cloth. But this LE was equal to 54.7 centimeters of cloth in Frankfurt and 65.6 centimeters of cloth in Nuremberg, and so on. That means in different cities it was different. You can just imagine how difficult it would be to calculate the cost of cloth if the currency differs from place to place and also state to state, and also the weights and measurements, and the unit of measurement of cloth also differs from place to place. Such conditions hindered economic growth and also economic exchange. It was not possible for the people to exchange their goods because of these different currencies and different weights and measurements. And also it hindered economic growth. Economic growth was not possible. The new commercial classes, they demanded for creation of a unified customs union, and so that all the states can have the same currency and they can overcome such problems. That was demanded by the new commercial classes. What they demanded? They demanded that a new unified customs union must be created so that all the states will have same currency and they can have same weights and measurements, and then they can overcome such problems. And accordingly, in 1834, a customs union called Zollverein was formed at the initiative of Prussia. At the initiative of Prussia, a customs union was formed, Zollverein, and most of the German states, they joined it. And when they joined it, this customs union abolished all the tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from 30 to 2. All the countries which joined this customs union, Zollverein, they had a common currency. So now the number of currencies was reduced from 30 to 2. Previously there was 30 different currencies in different states. Now these different currencies were reduced to 2. So it became easy for the traders to trade in their goods, and also it was possible for economic growth. Now, a new conservatism after 1815. Conservatives believed that established old traditional institutions of state and society, like the church, monarchy, etc., should be preserved. They believed that church, monarchy, all these must be preserved, they should not be abolished, because in those days monarchies were being abolished and some other type of government was being established. So these conservatives, they are of the opinion that these old traditional institutions like church, monarchy, parliament, all these old traditional institutions must be preserved, they should not be abolished. They should not be abolished at any time. Of course, they never proposed to go back to the conditions before the revolution. They did not want the conditions which were there before the revolution, but they proposed that these church and monarchy should be preserved, they should not be abolished. But they realized that in the name of modernization, if any changes are made in the existing system, like abolition of feudalism or serfdom, feudalism was abolished in Europe and serfdom was also abolished, first in England and then in all the other European states, and modern army was created, and so these could strengthen the autocratic monarchies of Europe. If in the name of modernization such steps are taken by the state, then it will help the autocratic monarchies of Europe. Monarchies anyway, they wanted them to continue. They should not be abolished at any time. That is the belief of conservatives. They believe that the old must be preserved. It should not be abolished. Now, today's homework I am giving you. Read the part of the lesson completed today, underlining all the important points with pencil, and learn 1 mark questions 1 to 5 and 2 mark questions 7, 8, 9, and write them without seeing. And learn the keywords given in the material.